Hey everybody, how are you? This is Steve. Thanks for tuning back in the channel. Today's video is a different kind of video than what I've done in the past. And honestly, I don't know if I'm even going to post this video, but I've had so many thoughts swirling and ideas about what's going on in the first couple days of the Biden administration that I wanted to document these thoughts. And I just want to say right up front, I am not in any way against this administration. I do not plan to continuously battle against this administration. I do not plan to make any efforts to expose any negative things about this administration. What I would like to do with this conversation in this video is to provide some critique and evaluation of President Biden's first few days in office, revolving around just a few of the dozen or so executive orders that he has signed in his first day or two. So I want to start there. First of all, I'm going to try to do my best to speak objectively about what I see happening, and not in an attacking or demeaning way or diminishing way to President Biden or Vice President Harris. So I just want to make that clear up front. This is not going to be a Biden bashing channel. It's not why this channel was started. This channel was started, though, to communicate what I felt God was putting in my heart about current events. And also I've added in some, worship videos, live worship stream videos, things like that. So that's where we're at. So I just want to make that clear up front. And just so there's no misunderstanding. Also, as a clarifier, the previous administration and President Trump's administration had a number of things that were not healthy, did not go well. All in all, though, like I said in a couple of previous videos, God appoints leaders. He puts people in authority. He appoints authorities, basically, over us. And it's our duty as believers to pray for those authorities and submit to those authorities if they're operating in a godly manner. And sometimes they're not even in a godly manner. And there's plenty of examples in the Bible where people, populations, biblical characters had to endure some very difficult situations, but always looked to where their strength came from and who was their father. And I think that is the key here, that as believers we acknowledge and understand and press in, knowing who our Father is and who we are in Christ Jesus. So having said that, just want to start early on. I did a thing about the campaign slogan that President Biden ran on, and one of those slogans was, this is a battle for the soul of America. And if you missed that video, I want you to go back and take a look at that, because I think there's a different meaning than what's on the surface. And I think a lot of political slogans are that. They say one thing, but there's an underlying message there, underlying truth that maybe people don't recognize up front or realize. Maybe they don't want to realize it. Maybe they're so on board that it all sounds good to them. I don't know. But that was one of them. Another one that I heard fairly recently is he is going to work for all Americans. Well, right from the start, as soon as you hear that, it's not true, right? I mean, it's just an impossible thing to accomplish. So when you hear that, what does that really mean? What does that tell you? So you have to think about what the underlying message is there with that. I'm going to work for all Americans. And so obviously we know half the country didn't line up and vote for President Biden. And so automatically you would think that working for all Americans probably doesn't include that half of America. And you may be right. You may be right. But there's a significant portion of the population that does not fall under the Democratic political platform. And so it's an impossible thing to do, work for all Americans. We're so diverse in this country. How could you possibly do that? And how could you make such an irresponsible statement? So I think it was an irresponsible statement, but it was a political slogan, meant to rally his voters, his constituents. So political games played. I think that's what that was for sure. So, but here is the thing. You make a statement like that, and then in your first couple days you pass a couple executive orders that basically say, okay, that was nothing. That was just political slogan. It didn't have anything to do with working for all Americans. Excuse me, I'm drinking some tea. And so let's take a look at a couple of those executive orders. I think he signed like about a dozen the first day, but two of them stood out to me. And let me also just preface everything with this statement, in that we knew, he told us going in, he was going to reverse all the Trump era executive orders. All right, so that already tells me that there's no evaluation being done. There's no objective evaluation being done on whether these executive orders are effective or meaningful or apply to most Americans, right? So this was just a big case of getting even or reversing or revenge, to put his thumbprint on it and take charge of his newly attained role as the President of the United States. More political gamesmanship, but here's the issue. The two executive orders I'm talking about are, well, actually three, I think. Stopping construction on the border wall, and tied in with that was a stay on deportations of illegal immigrants. We'll start there. If that's not a hot button issue, a big enough hot button issue right up front, then what is, right? Stopping construction on the border wall is interesting. I think Donald Trump's administration actually only built about 400 miles of new wall. And quite honestly, it was a drop in the bucket. I mean, President Trump did what he needed to do politically to try to fill a campaign promise of having the wall built. And one of the statements he made actually was Mexico's going to pay for the wall, which obviously didn't happen. Some people will say it happened through trade agreements, but I'm not so sure that even had a major impact. I know that he did a lot of manipulation with budgeting and policy to try to get money funneled into the border wall construction projects. Not very successful, honestly. He didn't get much built. But President Biden comes in and basically says, halting construction on the border wall. Okay. Power play number one. Who does it help? Does it help all Americans, as he promised? He's going to be a president and work for all Americans. Well, no, obviously. It doesn't help all Americans, because if our borders are still porous and we're allowing a high number of illegal immigrants to come into this country, then stopping that would seem to make sense. Slowing it down, stopping it would seem to make sense and would benefit the most, if not all, Americans. So, promise broken already, right? So, just another point there that, it's a difficult and it was not a campaign slogan that had any value. All right, putting a stay on deportations of illegal immigrants. It's estimated there's 11 million illegal immigrants living in the United States. People living here without the proper authority, proper paperwork, proper tracking. That's an issue. A few years ago, one of his campaign things was, we can absorb 2 million people into our economy, no problem. Okay, again, one of those statements that's made to appease his constituents and attract voters. But in reality, it doesn't benefit all Americans. I do believe that in the middle of this pandemic, that may have been a good thing to do. Put a stay on deportations. The pandemic has created so much havoc and so much economic loss and destruction that where are people going to go? Honestly, the United States is hurting itself, as well as I'm sure Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, all Central America is probably hurting just as badly. In fact, the only economy to prosper in 2020 was the Chinese economy. That should be no surprise to anybody, simply because of the lack of reporting on coronavirus, the open borders, the allowing of flights in and out of that province, Hubei province, whatever it was, where Wuhan is in China, knowingly spreading the virus. That probably told us right there that this was not on the up and up. Their government was really not concerned about its people, but more concerned about economic growth. And they were actually the only economy to grow in 2020. So you have that. But here's the thing about the stay on the deportations, from my perspective, is it's not going to be temporary. It's not done out of the goodness of his heart because of the effects of the pandemic. It's done because he's pushing a certain policy. Okay. Our immigration system does need reform. It needs extensive reform. We have allowed this to go on for decades and not gotten a handle on it. I can remember this back as far as the Clinton administration in the 90s and possibly Reagan. I mean, it could have gone way back as far as I know. But it's always been something that we've been challenged with in this country because, we are founded on the land of opportunity, basically being a place where people can come and pursue their life's dreams, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But when you look even back at immigration in the 20s and 30s, by the 20s, we started putting limitations on where people could migrate from in this country. In fact, my grandfather, a Sicilian, born and raised in Sicily, could not get a visa to come over and gain entry through Brooklyn, through Ellis Island. So he wound up moving to Argentina and spending a couple years in Argentina before he could move into the United States. And so there have been times in our history where we've had to clamp down on the number of immigrants coming into the country. There's nothing wrong with that. There really is nothing wrong with that because part of the government's responsibility and state's responsibility is to serve and protect their people, maintain a balanced budget, maintain fiscal responsibility, maintain a tax base, monitor tax base, provide services, essential services to their people that live in the state. So there are a lot of responsibilities here, and when you add illegal immigration to this extent you do begin to burden and encumber systems and infrastructure that, quite honestly, you're not able to pay for very well. So comes a challenge. It's all an interesting article, and I'll try to link it down below in the description section of a very objective view of illegal immigration. Talks a little bit about the economics of it, but it also talks about the morality of it. And so I think it's a really good discussion to have, but this country does need immigration reform. So those two orders right up front kind of just went all against President Biden's promises up front. Okay, so the other one now is pulling the permits for stopping construction on a portion of the Keystone Pipeline. This one, again, does not benefit all people. In fact, here's effectively from what I read, if he's basically cut 10 to 11,000 jobs just with this one swipe of his pen in the middle of a pandemic. So, in my mind, it's like, why did you do that so quickly? And there was only one reason. He did it because Trump reversed it to begin with, right? And so, it was held up through the Obama administration, which, President Biden was the vice president under, and so he's very much going back to that. Let's reset it. Let's put it back to what his normal is. Probably not a good decision right now in particular. Obviously, our energy needs are various and vast today and growing more. So just a little bit of background on myself. I've worked in several industries, but mainly in energy and power my whole life. And so I've worked in, when I was in the Navy, I was in nuclear, did some nuclear stuff. Post-Navy, I did renewable fuels, waste energy. I was worked with a design-build firm that heavily supported the ethanol industry back in the mid-2000s. And since then, I've been oil and gas. And so this one hits home, right? So our energy policy really needs to be reviewed, and it really needs to be renewed. And there's been such a tremendous focus on renewable fuels, solar, hydro, wind, and I think it's all part of the answer here. I think every attempt to be energy independent is going to benefit us. We have probably a limited amount of natural resources. The world has a limited amount of natural resources, and so we've got to be responsible for it. So I think a comprehensive energy policy includes all forms, including nuclear. I'm a really heavy nuclear proponent, by the way, because I feel it's the cleanest energy there is outside of the long-term storage for spent fuel rods. But when you look at that, that's very small considering how long fuel rods last, how long the fuel supply lasts. Things that now we're finding out is windmill turbine blades aren't recyclable, and they're taking up a ton of landfill space right now and just eating up land. Solar takes up a ton of property, countryside, places that have to be clear cut, to put in solar farms and such. So, there's trade-offs with every fuel source. And so this executive order, I knew it was coming. We all knew it was coming, but I felt it was irresponsible. This was a very impactful decision. One that was, again, motivated by spite, motivated by the feeling of righting a wrong, whatever you want to call it, but I feel like it was one that was done without much thought. It was premeditated. So here's the thing about Keystone Pipeline. There's been tons of environmental firms, agencies, federal and state level, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers done extensive studies. And every one of these agencies have signed off and approved this pipeline. What more can you do from a regulation standpoint to gain approval? You can't do any more. It's gone through the process. If you don't like the outcome, change the evaluation criteria, change the regulations, change the process. So it's amazing to me that our president would just be so quick to sacrifice jobs on day one of being in office because he didn't feel like it was supposed to happen, or he was doing it out of spite. I really don't know. But there is motivation there for sure. So here's the thing. I am praying for President Biden and praying for Vice President Harris. And I will do so as often as they come into my mind, which right now is pretty often. But they need it. They need our prayers. And when you say you're going to work for all Americans, it's a misnomer. It's just not going to happen. Maybe a better campaign slogan would have been, we're going to work for the bettering of America. Okay? And outline what that means. You know, don't say you're going to work for all Americans, because expectations are impossible to meet. You can't do it. So anyway, that is today's video. Hopefully I came across right and correctly, and with some grace. There's a lot of concerns right now with some of these executive orders that are being signed. I understand why they're being done. It's a political theater thing. Maybe it's a morality thing. Maybe, whatever. Could be personal. I don't know. However, God knows. God knows what's going on. God still has plans for America. And if you believe, like the word says, that God appoints authorities, well then you believe that he appointed President Biden and Vice President Harris to be right where they are today. Like I said before, God can do anything in his time, right? He can do it. He can bless them. He can change their hearts. He can motivate them to make more biblical decisions, things that will prosper and advance the kingdom. So that's what I'm praying for, that they have an encounter. They both have a Jesus encounter, and they are righteous leaders. God righteous leaders. That's all we can do. That is exactly what we're supposed to do. So thank you very much. Hopefully this made sense, and look forward to hearing some comments, hopefully, in the comments section down below. And thank you very much. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.